Want to actually learn how to cup coffee and give it a proper score? Stay tuned and find out. Hey everyone, I'm Jay, and this is the continuing series of green coffee buying, and we're looking at how to buy green coffee, how to evaluate it, and then determine whether or not you really want to buy it or not. And so green coffee, of course, is the natural state of the Arabica. It's the raw state, and this whole series is about how to evaluate that green coffee and determine whether or not it's the right coffee for you. All right, so in today's video, we're actually going to be cupping the coffee that we've been working with, and then that coffee is the Cordillera del Fuego, their Termico process. It's a new process by Don Luis Campo in Costa Rica, and it basically takes the coffee, removes the seeds, the coffee bean, from the husk, and then also does a partial, I'm guessing they're using what's called a demucilaginadora, which is basically a machine that removes a portion of the mucilage that coats the bean. The mucilage is basically kind of this pulpy, sweet matter that covers it. It's very reminiscent of the flesh of a grape. And so basically they remove a portion of that, not completely, and then they take that, put that into tanks, and then heat the whole tank up, and that really kind of aids fermentation of the sugars, plus does a light caramelization on it. I haven't seen it myself, I've just been reading about it, and it sounds kind of interesting. So in the other videos, we actually looked at the coffee, sorted out any of the defects, gave it some roasting, and now it's time to taste. So for today's cupping, we're going to need our coffee. We've got the 85.5 grams of roasted coffee that we got from the 100 grams that we started with. Moisture content, basically. As you can see, this is the original green. And the first thing we're going to do is weigh it out. So we've got our scale. Turn the scale on. We're going to need our cups. Now, cupping cups can be pretty much anything you want. We use these 9-ounce glasses. I like the glass. I like to see through it. These are pretty thick walled because they're meant for bar use, so they'll be relatively well insulated. You can use whatever you want. A lot of this particular style is what you see in a lot of cupping labs and a lot of proper cupping rooms and proper cupping sessions. You'll find this shape, and this one is actually from the Escuela de Café in El Salvador, in San Salvador. They gave me these, thank you very much. And then the other style that you'll see is this one. This is also ceramic. It's a little bit more tapered, a little more stylish. It's what's it? It's Norwegian. This one is actually from the Nordic. This is from the 2010 Nordic Barista Cup. One of my former baristas, Rebecca, gave this to me. Thank you very much, Rebecca. I've always loved it. I tend not to use these that often, but because basically we use these glasses, but these are just some of the other options that are available to you. So once you have this, you're going to take your scale and tear it out. I need to see. Tear it out. And for this particular application, we're going to be, so this is 9 ounces. We're going to use 13 grams. Oops. Great, 13 grams. All right, 13 grams. We now have 5 samples of 13 grams. Why are we using 5? 5 is the basic standard that the SCA has set as sample numbers for critical coffee tasting. And so what we want to do is we want to have a number of samples that we can taste to see about uniformity and if there are any defects, so that in case we find one defect, let's say we find a defect in this, let's say this one has a defect in it. If this was the only cup of coffee that we're using as a sample, we would think that maybe the coffee has a lot of defects. Now, if there's a defect in this sample but none in these, then we know that this is more of an anomaly, and we can cup again, do another round, and see if there's something wrong, or see if there's any kind of pattern. But right now it doesn't. If there's only one defect, then it doesn't really show a pattern. If there's 2 or 3, that could be more severe, right? So that's why we use 5, and then it gives you a chance to check out, is the sweetness uniform? Is it uniformly clean? Is it uniformly sweet? Is it uniformly uniform? Those are the 3 categories on the sheet that have the 5 boxes, and that's why they have 5 boxes, because we have 5 samples. Now you can also use less samples, depending on your personal needs. A lot of times, if I'm just cupping less critical cuppings, I'll use 3 samples. I'll use 3 samples instead of the 2. But for the most part, when we're doing critical cupping, it's always 5. So if you're doing green coffee sampling, especially at the farms or from importers, you want to do 5 just so you get the right amount. You get a good spectrum and kind of get a better idea of what to expect. And you should also, of course, make sure you roast enough coffee so that you have leftovers. So if you're using 13-gram samples, that 100 grams turn out to be just right. All right, so now we're going to grind these coffees and come back. All right, so now we've ground the coffee. You want to grind the coffee to about a medium fineness, and that'll give you a nice, kind of looks like that. Can you see that? There we go. All right, so let's, we're setting up our cups. This is how we're going to cup the coffee. Each of these coffees now will be in a stationary position, so we're not going to move the coffee. So remember that what that means is that if you pick this cup, most protocols today you no longer pick up the cup, but if you do want to do the pickup, I like to do it. If you pick it up from one position, it always goes back, right? It never moves. So the first thing to do is we'll grab our sheet. And for today, we're going to be using the new Specialty Coffee Association cupping form on a clipboard, because clipboards are professional. Remember, that's the #1 lesson: is clipboards are professional. All right, so there's a spot here for your name and all that. You can and date. You can do that. I'll put my name. Table #1, sample #1. Very good. All right, back with the glasses. All right, so first thing we do, we're going to look at the roast profile. The roast profile looks pretty medium, pretty light. So I'm going to note that right about there. Got that? All right. Next is our fragrance. So fragrance is just about smelling the dry fragrance of the coffee. So let's do that. All right, so in this case, when you're cupping in a group setting, if you're cupping with more people than by yourself, it's typically a quiet engagement, meaning that there's no talking, there's no discussion, there's no like, I smell blah, 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 because we don't want to influence the perception of the next person or the people around us. So always done in silence. In this particular example, I'm going to talk because we're tasting and we're sharing our thoughts, right? Most of the time in a cupping session, you'll actually share your thoughts. If you're sharing your thoughts at all, you'll share your thoughts with your friends or with the group after the cupping is completed. So we're doing it again. I get a lot of fruity notes, a lot of fruit, like not stone fruit, but more berry fruit. A lot of like strawberry, kumquat, but really strawberry. Strawberry is more of the apparent one. Could be a little bit of peach, maybe a little bit apricot, but a nice, really strong fruitiness that I find to be rather intense. I'm going to say about 3/4 intensity. So that's why, if you look at the dry section right there, 3/4 intensity. I think the quality of that is very good. So again, if we're looking at what kind of scale we're talking, very good. I would say probably 7.75 if just the dry, but that's not the entire score. So we're going to continue. Next up, we're going to bring in our hot water and start getting the timer going. So I'll be right back. We've got our water just off the boil. We're going to reset our timer so that it's back to 0. Right? Got that? Okay, there it is, back to 0. And we're going to start the timer once the water hits the coffee. We're also going to fully saturate the grounds. You want to make sure that all the coffee has been saturated and is completely wet as you're pouring, and pour in one constant steady stream right to the very edge. So, and when you have a large cupping with a lot of samples, this can be a bit of a frenzy. But luckily it's just us today, so it's going to be pretty simple. Oh, a little bit over. That's all right. Right to the edge. And then we're going to need an extra cup as our rinse cup. And for our rinse cup, we're going to need a couple of extra cupping spoons. In this particular case, I'm using stainless steel restaurant store soup spoons, in addition to my fancy cupping spoon. So you can have fancy cupping spoons, or you can have plain soup spoons. It's kind of up to you. Now that that has been set, we're going to smell the cap and get the wet aroma. It's okay to get really deep into the cup and almost touch your nose to it. If you do touch your nose, that's perfectly normal. What I'm getting now, well, we had the dry fragrance was really kind of fruity and kind of strawberry and kumquats and apricots. This is now changed as it's been wet. It's more spice, more cinnamon, more nutmeg. Kind of like almost Christmas spices. That's quite interesting. All right, we're about 2.5 minutes. So we're just waiting for 4 minutes before we do the break. Then just to recap, the break is about taking your spoon and using the back of your spoon to push up against the coffee bed and break open the top. And when you break open the top, we want to be close with our nose and inhale deeply to get any kind of aromatics that are floating underneath the cap. If you have time, you can go back and have another smell. Typically, when you're with other people, you're being nudged out of the way because other people want to get in, and it's actually kind of nice when you cup by yourself because you can really take the time and really get into it. Where in a crowd, you don't really have that kind of time and that luxury. And sometimes you may not even get to smell it all. All right, we're reaching 4 minutes, so we're going to do the break. I'm going to show you. So basically, again, take the back of your spoon, get it from the back closest to your nose, and then push away. Then you want to use your rinse here and rinse out your spoon between samples. Again, we're going to push and inhale. Now you'll also see some people stirring. That's kind of fine too. It's kind of up to you. What you want to do, if you see here, right, you can kind of see that it's clear. If you see here, as you can see, there is this whole lightness section, and you can see the cap floating, and there's coffee grinds at the bottom. As you're breaking, you don't want to dip your spoon all the way down and stir up those coffee grounds. We want those coffee grounds to settle, and then we'll remove the ones that are floating later. So again, let's do the break. Rinse again. Let's keep doing that. That's kind of interesting. All right, so this time we're going to do a little bit of a stirring that you'll see people do. You know, as you can see in that particular instance, a lot of the coffee grounds fell. That's all right. The more coffee grounds that fall, the less you have to clean. So let's see, how do those look? All right, that looks pretty good. Now on top of the coffee, there's very little coffee grounds left remaining. I'm going to grab one more cup, and then I'm going to show you the rinse pattern. So we're going to take our 2 spoons, and then we're going to use them as basic, you know, scoops. Transfer them out, rinse your spoons off between samples. Good. Rinse. Rinse again. Clean that out. Rinse some more. All right, and voila, there it is. We have now cleaned up all of our coffee. Let's not get this. We have cleaned up our coffee, and now we're ready to go. And we have about 7.5 minutes have passed. I'm going to refresh this water, and then we're going to start cupping around 10 minutes. All right, excellent. Now we're back. I'm going to put all that in there. I'm going to get some more hot water for our rinse cup. And I'm going to get one more cup as our spit cup. So it's kind of up to you. A lot of times in a professional setting, when you're tasting a lot of coffees, well, everyone's going to be spitting. And, you know, for those of you who are haven't done this professionally or have not been to professional cupping, one of the things that you're probably thinking to yourself, why would you want to spit the coffee out? That's the whole reason for tasting the coffee, is you want to drink it. Well, it's kind of one of those things where if you drink a lot, if you're tasting a lot of coffee, you just don't want to get over caffeinated. And even though you're tasting and expectorating the sample that's in your mouth, you're still absorbing that caffeine. So I tell you, when you've been to like really large cupping sessions where you're doing 20, 30, 40 plus coffees a day, even though you're spitting, it really can get to you. Like, you'll go back to your hotel and you're not feeling at 100% because you just had so much exposure to caffeine. So spitting is a great way to go to keep it down. Of course, if you're just doing this at home and you're just doing one and you want to swallow it, feel free. There's no rule against it. Okay, so now we're running at right about 10 minutes. So let's start the cupping. Take the cupping spoon. So here's one thing that you want to do is you want to slurp. And that slurping is essentially creating a spray on your palate that coats your entire mouth. So you kind of want to, like a spray, like that. So you're kind of like this, right? Good. All right, so here we go. Maybe that's still a little bit hot. Let's wait a couple more moments. We don't want to burn palates. Oh, let's go through this. So now we did the break, and like I said, there was a lot of spiciness in the wet aroma. In the break, it wasn't really that. I would say the intensity of the break was below medium, so I'm putting that mark here. And I think for this, I'm going to give a qualitative score of 7.5. Now, if you're just making the hashed marks, you can put any, if you're doing it correctly, which I wasn't doing here, you don't have to put the number in. You can wait till you're finished and then put the numbers in. I did that just to make sure that I wouldn't forget. Although, probably it doesn't matter since I could rewind the video. All right, so let's actually get into the tasting. On this first tasting, what flavor I'm getting the most is a very medicinal kind of flavor. Kind of like a Robitussin character. Maybe Robitussin with a little bit of Dimetap. Yeah, very medicinal, kind of light in the body. The body's quite light. The acidity is, I'd say medium plus, not really high, but not definitely not medium. There's a good amount of acidity there, so it's kind of lively on the palate. What else do we have to look at? Like I said, the body is pretty low, but pretty thin. The aftertaste, clean but dry. That kind of dryness that you get from like a heavy oaked Chardonnay, that tannic dryness, that's kind of what's lingering on the palate. The flavor is on the aftertaste, the flavor diminishes quickly, and then there's a little bit of that maybe light grape, like that purple juicy grape that you like, Fanta grape, very light, that Dimetap grape, very, very light. That's lingering on a little bit, but really it just kind of drops off and then, yeah, all right. The balance seems good. Now the second tasting, we're only about 15 minutes into total time. It has cooled a little bit from the first tasting. That Dimetap kind of grape character has intensified slightly. It's also kind of improved in quality, meaning that it's a little bit more defined. Body's still very light. Acidity is still about the same. And the balance is still pretty much where it was. I'm not tasting any taints or off flavors or any kind of defects in any of the samples. I would say that these coffees definitely have a nice sweetness, a sugary, kind of, not really sugary, but more of like a brown sugar quality sweetness. Not like a pronounced like sweetness like you'd have in like Coca-Cola or something like that, but just a nice kind of light, kind of in the background sweetness. Now I'm one of these guys that it always kind of dribbles down my chin. I haven't quite figured that out. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to check out the other videos on the Spro channel. We've got a lot of great videos, I think, that are educational and will help you understand and hopefully appreciate coffee better. Also, if you're interested, check out my personal channel, Ono Coffee. I've got a lot more videos there that are a little bit more open-minded, or a little bit more open in the coffee world. So, and as well as other interests that I have. So you can check that out, Ono Coffee. And if you're interested in some coffee for yourself to take home, come and see us at our shop in Hamden, or order online, sprocoffee.com. We can send you coffee as you wish. We have a subscription program that gives you 10% off all the coffees, and you can get that sent to you on a weekly, bi-weekly, tri-weekly, or even monthly schedule. So give that a consideration, and if you want to support the channel, support Spro, that's the best way to do it. We really appreciate the support and the consideration, as well as your patronage, and we hope you enjoy the coffee. All right, so we're coming up on 20 minutes. Is that right? Yep, 20 minutes. So let's taste again. So at this point, the coffee has cooled considerably. The grapey Dimetap character is still very apparent. It's very much there. It's not offensive. It's just nice and clear, and it's got a nice roundness to it. The balance is about the same, so I'd say the balance is, it's very good balance. It's very light on the body. It's kind of a medium light acidity now, where it was brighter early on when it was hotter. It's kind of diminished, so the quality is still very good. Oh, the aftertaste still has that light tannic finish. Well, the flavor dissipates really quickly on the aftertaste. Yeah, the aftertaste dips, the flavor dissipates very quickly. Still a little hints of the grapiness to it, but it's really quite gone and a little bit tannic, so perhaps not the highest scoring in that respect. So let's see, now that we've gotten through it, you could go longer. At this point, there hasn't been much change to the coffee over the last 22 minutes, so I'm going to call it. You could wait to 30 minutes. You could wait a little bit longer. I might leave it sitting after we're finished here and just go back and taste it. In case there's anything that I missed, I'll come back and let you know. But let's do some scoring right now. So we've got the aftertaste. Like I said, the aftertaste, really kind of light, really kind of fleeting, tannic. I want to say 7.25. Acidity, the intensity was, at the end of the day, the intensity was medium-low, but it had nice quality. I'd say 7.75. The body, very thin. And the body really wasn't, you know, like I said, it could be thin, it could be very good, but the thinness here, the thinness is not bad. I'd say 7.5 for that. Uniformity, completely uniform across, so that's a full 10. Is all clean, so that's another full 10. The sweetness, all uniformly sweetness, 10. Then the balance. The balance, you know, I thought was very good. So I'm going to say 7.75 for the balance. Well balanced, good coffee. And then finally the flavor. Now here's the thing about the flavor. The flavor, when we started out with the dry fragrance, we had a lot of great, really interesting aromatics of fruit, like the strawberries, the kumquat, the apricot. And then when we got into the wet aroma, adding the water, we started getting more cinnamon and spice, Christmas spices, things like that. So it was getting kind of exciting. Then to actually taste it, it really was mostly just Robitussin and Dimetapp. So this big promise of in the aroma, but the delivery and the flavor was just not there. You know, it's kind of like, since we talked about Christmas spices, you know, it's kind of like Santa's helper or Santa at the mall telling you, yeah, I'm going to give you that big race that you've been wanting. And then he delivers you a car that you didn't want. Oh. Or just a nice car that's great, but, you know, so the flavors are not bad. The flavors are consistent. It's very even. It's very smooth. It's very balanced. But in the flavor department, I just didn't think it lived up to it. I would say 7, I want to say 7.5. So, you know, very good, but I was, you know, I would have expected better. So my overall score for all of these, oh wait, let's see. Did I say balance? I did say balance. Balance 7.75. The overall score I would give, again, informed by what we've been tasting, I would say 7.5. No, I'm sorry. I would say 7.75. I would say 7.75. All right, there it is. We've got flavor and fragrance aroma 7.5, flavor 7.5, aftertaste 7.25, acidity 7.75, body 7.5, uniformity 10, balance 7.75, clean cup 10, sweetness 10, and then the overall score of 7.75. Now let's calculate that and figure that out. Let's go. 7.5 plus 30 is 83. And then there are no taints or faults, so our total score is 83. So, this is our results. So very good coffee. Very good coffee. 83. You know, there's some things that, you know, you're probably sitting at home thinking, oh gosh, I was just hoping that it was going to be higher, it should be higher. And, you know, it is a micro lot. So it's a micro lot that is at a higher price point. I mean, the price point, I believe, is over $6. I think it's $6.25. So this is a question, you know, is the 83 justified? And I think there's a little bit more to discuss about this that I think is important. Remember, one of the things that we're doing here is that we are using a very light roast, and the light roast for cupping is designed to enhance any kind of defects that are in the coffee. So that's going to be part of it. Also, as a green buyer, you have to kind of taste this, and based on the experience that you've had previously, you're tasting these coffees in a very light roast, and you have to think about how would this coffee perform with a production roast, a coffee that, or a roast profile that you have developed for this coffee. You know, in initial discussion here, I do think there's a lot of potential that could be exploited out of this. I think a lot of the lightness with a little bit of a different approach to roasting, I think can really enhance the coffee. We'll go into more on that in the future videos for the series, and especially during our evaluation of the coffee. If you haven't seen the previous videos in this series, please check them out. I think you'll find them enjoyable and informative. Otherwise, we're going to see you in the next video, and that's coming up soon. That's pretty much it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great one. Has it changed? Has it changed? Negative. Ciao.